Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Jets Life podcast. I'm your host, Anthony, and we have a big show today. The Jets were live as the Jets open up their second week of the preseason. A lot of storylines to get through in this episode. We'll jump right into the storylines here, but before we get into it, if you could please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, also hit that notification button. Leave me a comment, and I'd be happy to pop it up on the screen. And if it's after the show, definitely reach out and respond to any replies. But let's get right into the conversation here. Obviously, the Jets open up the second week of the preseason against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Chances are the Steelers would play primarily backups. But there are big storylines here. The Jets are going to play the starters. So let's get right into the keys to this game. Obviously, number one, same as last week, leave this game with as minimal injuries as possible. I know Breece Hall injured earlier in the week with the groin. Pons has still been out. Sadiq has still been out for some time. We started to get reinforcements back into the groove. Devondre Sweat activated this week. Osai activated this week. So you're starting to get those guys that missed the earlier part of training camp starting to work their way in. But then obviously, as the preseason progresses, training camp, more and more players are going to get injured. But the key here is obviously avoid, as possible, knock on wood, any catastrophic injuries. Jets have been fortunate with these minor injuries that are multiple weeks, keeping the guys off the shelf, and then they've been coming back. But obviously, big. The Jets need a healthy unit for the entire team in order to make the season anything close to the higher level of expectations that we all wish that this team has the ability to do. Injuries could severely derail any hope that this fan base has on this current season. So obviously, number one, let's get out of this game. Injuries as minimal as possible. Key storyline number two, the Glenn effect. Something I saw in the first week of the preseason was that, obviously things were rolling smoothly. The Jets are going up against the Tampa Bay, I'll call it second/third unit. Obviously, nothing to be overly optimistic about from the standpoint of, they looked so great against Tampa. Tampa's a strong unit, so on and so forth. Not the case for me, primarily. What I liked seeing was the minimal turnovers until Bailey Zappi eventually worked his way in. No penalties. The penalties, I think, started late in the game. I think by the time it was like late third quarter, early fourth quarter, there was, I forget the player's name, offensive lineman, probably a player that won't be on the roster once the season starts, had like two holding penalties over the span of like three players or something like that. And the graphic popped up that was the third penalty of the game after his second holding. So that's a key for this team. We all remember in the holidays, this team was one of the top, five or so teams in penalties per game. Not a good stat, obviously. So with stars playing minimal reps and the second unit kind of working their way through and to eventually start getting penalties called when you get to that like tail end of your roster, that's a positive sign, positive development. And I think this is probably one of the biggest things that Glenn can really kind of control from a coaching standpoint. He has a lot of areas to improve. If he can improve and cut down on the penalties, which have always been a thorn in the Jets side for so long, drive killers, just keys to why the team has historically lost some games is, it's hard enough for this offense to score points. When you get down into the red zone, down to the deep area, and you start getting these stupid penalties that this team has just had a history of getting, it's just not something that this team can do. I'd like to see that kind of continue. Now, obviously, any team is going to get penalties, but if Glenn can keep those to a minimum, that's a key. Another area I'd like to see him kind of improve is that in-game management. Obviously, it's hard to dissect that in a preseason type of atmosphere, but we saw him last week calling timeouts at the end of the game, calling timeouts at the end of the half. That clock management stuff. Now, you're not going to kind of do that in a way to try and win a game here, but he was using those timeouts late in the fourth quarter, much to Brian Costello's dismay. But you want to see that kind of stuff. This is the time to do it. Is an extra 30 seconds in a football game that doesn't matter really going to kill you? Probably not. Let's see what happens here, and we'll dive more into the details there. Obviously, clock management will go into some more details. So that was a upset about from week one once we get deeper into the conversation. So obviously you want to see Glenn show positive signs as a head coach. This is a big season for him, big season for the franchise. If we're gonna know by the end of the season whether or not he's the answer at head coach, or it's he's gonna be fine. I don't think there's much in between. You either think that you're moving in the right direction with him as a head coach, or he's gone. Those are basically the two alternatives. So you've got to see positive movement from Aaron Glenn, or this whole thing kind of moves in a different direction. Key storyline number 3, the Jets' defensive identity. Again, probably pairs similar with the Aaron Glenn topic here, but I do like what I saw in the limited time the starters were out there, the different looks we were getting from this defensive front. I like Minkah Fitzpatrick getting deep into the box and coming in on blitzes. I think he did on the very first play of the game. These are the kind of looks that we saw out of an Aaron Glenn defense back when he was with Detroit that we didn't really get to see last year. Obviously, Steve Wilkes being the one calling the plays. You'd like to see more of these kind of looks, just things to confuse opposing teams. The Jets have a pretty unique defensive alignment. They have plenty of guys in the front seven. They have plenty of guys that can play, at the safety position, nickel. They have a lot of guys that are very versatile. Now, are all these guys household names? Can they all, rise to the level that we need them to? Remains to be seen. There are some players that I'm very questionable about. Obviously, Cisco's a player I have question marks about. Jarvis Brownlee, played solid to an extent, but also very handsy. A lot of penalties thrown his way and battling through injuries. Zaire Thomas, another player who battled through injuries last season, but obviously from all accounts, he's having a pretty strong training camp. But you just want to see, and obviously the Jets are not going to throw the bag here in preseason game number 2, but the fact that they're showing some of these looks gets you a little bit excited about what this defense can be. From another standpoint of this defense, you just want to see on this front seven who's going to stand up. Now, I doubt Osai's playing. I think that's probably a foregone conclusion. But you want to see Bailey make another step in the right direction. And in Barr, you want to see him start kind of making his way. Kavander, so probably not going to see him today. Just coming back from his 2-week out with the hamstring. And nor do we really want to see them. They're capable players. You just want them ready for week 1 so that we can have just as many starting players available at our disposal. But it's key here for the Jets from this standpoint of just this defense. What's the identity? And it needs to be much better than it was last season. Last season was obviously one of the worst defenses we've seen in a very long time. Not even very long time. Obviously, Robert Saleh's first season was pretty abysmal as well. But he was able to turn around after that season with a very, very strong unit in year 2. I don't foresee that level of change from year 1 to year 2. Obviously, the Jets invested heavy assets in year 2 to bolster that defense. The Jets invested some money and some capital in the defense, but not nearly as much as the Jets did going into year 2 of Robert Saleh's tenure here. So do I expect that same level of jump? No, but I would like to see this defense just move in the right direction. And, again, going down to that Glenn effect, he's now calling the defensive plays. Is his identity, is his personality, is his persona working its way into this defensive unit. I think having Demario Davis there is a huge plus. He will basically be Aaron Glenn on the football field playing middle linebacker. And Minkah, I think, is another key, just the veteran leadership on this team. Again, you just want to see what this defense comes out with. Stars will be playing limited, so you won't get a huge sample size. But just, again, you want to see progress. You want to see this defense starting to work its way towards some normalcy. And probably a good plug here, going right into normalcy. Key storyline number 4, just want to see this offense continue to look normal. Very, very, very low bar that we have on this offense because we've been basically tortured with offensive playing ability. We had the likes of Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trevor Siemian, the list goes on and on. Quarterbacks playing the position that really, normal would be a mile above what we've been accustomed to. So you just want to see this offense continue to make those small strides. I understand last week was sort of a little bit of an anomaly because the Jets had all their starters out there for the most part, with the exception of Geno Smith. Cade Klubnik calling the shots. I will continue with that Cade Klubnik and Geno Smith conversation in a moment. But you had all the starters out there going against Tampa's second/third unit. But the Jets were able to move the ball down the field. They did it pretty effectively. Got into the red zone in the first possession. Obviously, a huge run on the second possession by Braylon Allen. These are things that you want to see from an offense that has struggled mightily. You just want to see them start to build towards some level of competency that you can say, hey, this team is built for an eventual rookie, whether it be Klubnik this year or a rookie in next year's draft. You just want to start seeing those minor, wins that eventually turn into productive games, that maybe turn into eventually this offense being able to win some football games instead of requiring multiple punt return touchdowns in a season, without requiring multiple kick return touchdowns in a season. You want to see, can this offense eventually evolve into something that you can sit there and say, okay, here's a week where here's the game plan. You actually feel confident this offense can execute that game plan, and that game plan eventually resulting in wins. Something that, again, is bare minimum, but sometimes you just got to, I wouldn't even say crawl before you can walk. Can you just at least roll over onto your tummy before you start crawling? That is literally where the Jets are as a franchise on the offense side of the ball, and the defense for that matter too. This is literally a team starting from bare minimum. They need to improve in the margins, in the small areas, and then eventually can those things turn into sustainable, culture shifting type of, can this turn into your personality? I think they're going to be heavy in the run game. This, without, obviously no major surprise, they've invested heavily on that offensive line, and they have put $45 million contract on the board for Breece Hall. They have a second running back that they feel pretty confident in, Isaiah Davis, who knows when he comes back from injury. They are going to want to win games in the trenches. They've expressed that with their acquisitions amongst the offensive line, with their all the money they invested into the front seven. This is a team that is going to try and win games in the trenches. And again, working your way in that right direction, can you build some level of competency on the offense side of the ball? That's what we're looking for. That's what we're hoping for. Again, just bare minimum that we're looking for here. Can the Jets do that? Promised you I would get into it. Cade Klubnik versus Geno Smith. No, I will start things off. I do not think that there is a quarterback controversy. I think Geno Smith is your starter for a duration of time. I do not think there's really much that Klubnik can do. Obviously, he tears the world on fire and just destroys preseason, and Geno Smith looks terrible the first coming games of the season. Anything is possible. One thing I remember in a season when Russell Wilson was drafted by the Seahawks in the third round of the draft, working his way into the rotation was not easy. He had to go through Matt Flynn, who the Seahawks invested a huge contract into. It was a major surprise. Russell Wilson was not a player many viewed as a starter in this league, and won a battle in camp against a player that the team invested a lot of money in. And before you knew it, he was the long-term answer at quarterback, won a Super Bowl, was a few inches away, maybe a foot away from a second Super Bowl, if not for the bonehead interception, that stupid pass when Marshawn Lynch ran 4 yards against the Patriots. But you just never know what a starting quarterback is until really you see it on the football field. Cade Klubnik is one that, had a lot of upside coming out of college. He was a player that a lot of people believed going into last season had an opportunity to be the first overall pick. That was a conversation that was out there. I personally did not believe that. I still don't believe he's starting caliber. I think he looks like he can play the game, looks like he can kind of operate an NFL offense. I think that's again, saying a lot for what this team has had to deal with historically. So I give him credit for that. He looked like a professional out there when he was playing with the starters against the Tampa Bay backups. I do respect everything that he has done to this point, and I'd like to see him continue to thrive and move in the right direction, because who knows? I don't know the answer. I tend to believe he's a future backup, and that's not a bad thing. I would love to see it if he can evolve into something more. I'd love to see it if he can, be a player that's a floor raiser for the entire team. The way I look at last week's Tampa Bay game, and I mean, you can have your opinions on this if you want as well, and just feel free to kind of chime in if you have any of these thoughts. But the way I saw last week's game, he came into a unit, and say what you want about the Jets offense, but when he was starting, Tampa Bay was on to their second unit, third unit, whatever. I already mentioned that. Kate Klubnik on offense at any given point in time, the 11 stars that are on the field, he was probably your 10th, 9th to 11th best player. Probably more closer to 11th than anything else. That's the 5 offensive linemen that were continuous on the field: Membu, Fashanu, Tittman, Myers, and Parham. Probably all better than Klubnik, right? Then you have the receivers: Garrett, Isaiah Williams, Adonai Mitchell, or Omar Cooper as your third option, depending on who you have out there. Probably all better than Kate Klubnik. Your running backs: Breece Hall, Brown Allen, probably better than Kate Klubnik. Tight ends: Ruckert and Mason Taylor, probably better than Klubnik. So when he was out there, he was the worst player on the field for the offense, and he was going against second, third string defense, but he looked professional. He was getting the ball out there. He was doing his thing. What I want to see from him today that would make me feel even better going into this is, how does he handle when he's not kind of being the supporting cast around him isn't stellar compared to competition. When he's out there, he's going to be out there probably playing against the Steelers' second or third unit, yes, yet again, but he's going to be out there with the Jets' second unit. Can he, instead of being a guy that flourishes as one of the lower tier players on the field, can he elevate himself when the second unit or the third unit of the Jets is out there? Can he elevate himself to appear as if he's one of the top 3 or 4, 4 or 5 players on the team, and actually look like he can elevate the lower end of the roster above? I know it's a hard kind of concept to grasp here, but that's really what you're looking for here. He looked good with starters against backups. How does he look with backups against backups? Is this a move in the right direction? I think this is just a better way of getting a real glimpse into what he is. I do think he has the abilities to be a player in this league. I don't think he's a player that you're just going to say, okay, he's a bum, get him out of here. I think at best case scenario is a starter, and what you'd like to see is, can he show us backup potential that can eventually lead to some more promise. From the Geno standpoint, again, I don't see a scenario where Geno isn't the starter. I think definitely for week 1, I think the Jets do want Geno to be a starter. I'd be very, very shocked if Geno is not running out there in week 1 against the Titans. I don't even really see a situation where Cade is out there. Sky could be falling, right? The Jets could be 0-4 going into a type of situation, and the Jets will have to make a move. But I find it very difficult based on the Jets' schedule. They got Tennessee week 1, Green Bay week 2, and I forget the order: Chicago, Detroit week 3 and 4. I just don't know that it's smart maybe to put Klubnik out there in a situation where it's going up against really just like much stronger teams. The key is balancing, his confidence with, trying to get wins as well. And who knows? Again, we just don't know what we don't know. But if I had to guess, if there was a worst case scenario, I think they at least give Geno a month, try and turn this thing around. And you could probably see Cade Klubnik by like week 5, week 6. But even that, I think, is just way too aggressive. Geno would have to be playing out of his mind terribly in order for that scenario to come through, really. That's just my opinion. But, who knows? I could be dead wrong, and we could be dealing with a Russell Wilson type of situation. He could come in there and be an absolute animal on offense and be that first overall pick that a lot of people thought he had the ability to be. And Jets got a steal in the 4th round, and we're looking at this as one of the biggest draft picks in Jets history, if not the biggest draft pick in Jets history. That's the dream. I just don't know if that dream is coming true at this moment in time, but it's up to Cade, really, to prove us all wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I think he's capable. I just don't know if he's that going to be that long-term stable option at quarterback. But again, happy to be wrong on this topic. Last item I want to get to here, and this is really, again, it's preseason games. I think when you look at the Jets roster as a whole, it's pretty much, I think when you look at the Jets roster, it's pretty chalk. Like when you look at the starters, I don't know that there's really any positions that I look at and say, okay, is there any question marks of who's going to be the starters? I think you could really run down the line and say, okay, like I think they're keeping, 5 receivers, and I think these are the 5 receivers. And I think you look at the running backs, you feel pretty confident about the running backs they're going to keep. Quarterbacks, I think they keep 2, and I think it's Geno and Klubnik. Defensively, that defensive front, I think you could run down the line and say who they keep. And I think the major mystery is, okay, they're going to keep 9 offensive linemen or 10 offensive linemen. When you're really working on like the last 5 roster spots, if I had to guess, like does Arian Smith make the team? That's a big question. That's really where you look at here. So I don't know that there's necessarily that deep roster conversation. I think when you look late into this game and you're trying to look for a storyline, the biggest storyline of all is the Omar Cooper situation. And I don't know what's going on there. I thought he looked pretty solid in his first preseason game. I'm not there at the practices, obviously. I'm not going to judge a player based on a few, videos that pop out of him running the bag drills and stuff like that. I just don't think it's fair for a player that was so, basically a true number 1 target for a national championship caliber team. Yeah, he did have a really good quarterback throwing the ball, obviously first overall pick in Fernando Mendoza, but I thought Omar Cooper was damn solid as a, in his last year with Indiana. I thought Omar Cooper was absolutely outstanding in his limited time in the preseason. I don't know the overall, jumping to this guy's a bum, this guy's horrible. I don't agree with it. I think he looked good in his game. He had that nice route that he ran late in the second quarter, where he was able to get yards after the catch. That's what you're trying to see from him. He had that play in the back corner of the end zone, or the front pylon, where he was able to work his way back. Should have been a pass interference call, but obviously the ball was tipped at the line of scrimmage, so that negates the pass interference. I thought Omar Cooper looked good. I think he's definitely what you're looking for out of a third option as a wide receiver. He just got to work his way into the rhythm. And the beauty of this Jet situation. What up, broski? Yep, Dom, thank you for joining. I think that the situation here with Cooper is, and this is going for a lot of the rookies that the Jets drafted, with the exception of Bailey. I think he's obviously your number 1 defensive end on the unit. But even if he wasn't, you still have Joseph Asai there, who's a veteran in this league. You still have Will McDonald, which obviously, the opinions on Will McDonald. You still have players at those positions that have had meaningful snaps in this league that can allow these rookies to ease their way into the lineup as needed. And that even goes for Cade Klubnik with the Geno Smith situation. So when you're looking at these guys on the roster and you look at Omar Cooper, yeah, he has Adonai Mitchell on the outside. You have Garrett Wilson on the outside. You have Isaiah Williams, who's having a strong camp. Just because one player is having a strong camp does not mean another player is having a bad camp. Is Omar Cooper lighten things up at training camp like maybe David Bailey is? No, but there's a reason why David Bailey went 2nd overall. The Jets had a vision for this player, and based on that vision, they are letting him do what they think he does best. Not to say that they didn't have that same vision of Omar Cooper, but there's a reason why he fell deep into the first round at 30th or 31st, whatever they picked him. There's a reason he went late in the draft. The Jets are working him into it, but also allowing other players to compete and earn the reps that we all believe that they're capable of. I, for one, saw a lot of promise in Isaiah Williams down the stretch last season. And I thought that warranted him having a role on this offense. He's taking the end of last season and his role, and he's running with it, and he's gotten better. That is a good thing. The Jets have not had that. There have been so many seasons, and I look back at so many times where we just looked at the Jets roster, and maybe they ignored the wide receiver position. And you're like, oh, okay, we just need so-and-so player to just take another step, and that player just doesn't take the step. And now you're stuck with a situation where we were really hoping that this guy would take that next step because we felt like if he did, then this offense would be so-and-so. And that when that player doesn't, then it's like, okay, what are our fallback options? Oh crap, we never really had a contingency plan for this, and now we're kind of screwed. This front office has kind of gone a different way, and they have kind of labeled out that same effect. They have looked at players like, okay, we want to see Adonai Mitchell take a step in the right direction. We want to see Isaiah Williams. Can he develop into more than just that gadget type of player? I think that's kind of his role regardless. But just in case, we're going to invest a first-round pick in a wide receiver that we feel pretty confident in, that maybe, again, going into the draft, there were plenty of mock drafts out there penning Omar Cooper there at 6 for the Jets at 16. They ended up getting him much later in the draft with the combination of Sadiq. And let's look at Sadiq in the same light. Going into the season, if you would have said, okay, we need Mason Taylor to take a step forward, which I think he will. But if they would have ignored tight end in the draft, and you're going into the season, okay, we need Mason Taylor to take a step in the right direction. And if he doesn't, then what are we as a tight end room? The Jets have raised that floor by saying, okay, we're going to invest heavy capital in that tight end room by bringing someone who could potentially and should, by his draft position, be your number one tight end. And now instead of Mason Taylor needing to take that giant step to being your primary tight end, he just needs to take a step and be a solid number 2 tight end. And if he does take that jump where he's your primary guy, it does not hurt to have a secondary weapon in Sadiq that just expands what you can do as an offense. Listen, again, I just go back to it so many times. Omar Cooper's, quote unquote struggles this training camp isn't something that you should be overly concerned with. I think it's going to take time, but I also don't think that he's done anything to make me feel like he's a complete bust or he's a complete bum for this team. I could be dead wrong. And again, like I said with Kate Klubnik, it's a situation where this situation I would like to not be wrong. But I just think Omar Cooper flashed so much in college and, looked the part of what the Jets were hoping to get out of, I forget his name, the receiver over there, whatever his name was, the Yak King, I forget his name. Anyway, I think Omar Cooper has that plus a little bit more juice, and I think he can actually reach that potential. It's going to take time, like it does for a lot of rookies. No, there's not a lot of rookies that come out day one of training camp and look like stars. It's happening with Bailey, but you cannot expect that out of an entire draft class. And again, we'll see tonight. I want to see, Omar Cooper take what we saw in week 1. Can you kind of establish that a little bit further into week 2? And again, I love the pick of Omar Cooper, especially when you combine it with the fact that they were able to get Sadiq at pick 16. I think if the Jets left the draft with 1 and 16 being, Bailey and Cooper, you would have been pretty thrilled with the potential of this offense. They left Bailey, Sadiq, and Cooper, and I don't think that's something that we should all be kind of disappointed with in the way the draft shaked out. And I think Cooper really, again, just needs to take positive strides, keep working his way into it. If he's, even if he starts the season slow, you're really not expecting for a rookie to kind of take over an offense. He's not Garrett Wilson. He's not to that level. But, can he just be a reliable target? Can he get, 450, 500 yards this season? Would be a huge number for him, considering the fact that you already have a guy that has the abilities to get 12 to 1,300 yards in a season. Again, not concerned with Omar Cooper, but a positive game today to go along with the positive game he had last week could move this fan base into a situation where maybe these conversations slow down a little bit. I just don't think that they're necessary. But again, could be wrong. This one I don't want to be right about. Again, don't want to be wrong about this one here. I think Omar Cooper has the ability to be a solid number 3 wide receiver in his rookie year. And that's, again, huge strides for an offense that has just been a joke for far too long. Concerned about the shelf in the background. You got some championship gear there, buddy. Not Jets championship gear, but it is Knicks championship gear. Yep, it was much time to get that thing filled up a little bit. It required a Knicks championship in order to get that filled up. I've been waiting to fill it up with Jets championship gear, but unfortunately, it just hasn't come yet. But it's all about New York, buddy, and happy to have all the Knicks paraphernalia up there. Team Club Nick. I just wanted to be good. That's it. He just looked like a professional out there, and he did in week 1. Can you do it in week 2? No white cleats. No, I don't got the white cleats up there. 2 white championship hats, though. Love the championship gear. I don't get to say that a lot, being a Jet fan, so I'm supporting that a lot here. This, who knows? You might see a championship hat on episode 1 of the AFC Shakedown. Who knows? Oh, this is just the water, Tommy. I'll save the Jack and Coke for August 29th. How about that? Yeah. Tommy, appreciate you. Love it. Can't wait to 29th. It's going to be a lot of fun. Oh, snap. Johnny boy, what's going on? I hope you're on Dano's conversation. I don't know if you're in the league or not, but should be fun tonight. Hopefully we're talking about Club Nick lighting the world on fire and have a big conversation point. I think it's going to be Jason Sanders. I think that's the lock at this point. And I thought that was going to be the case anyway, but unfortunately, it's not Mr. Zvada. It's unfortunate. Tommy, all the love, brother. Again, just cannot wait until the season starts. Talking about preseason games is just ugh. It's worse than nails on a chalkboard. ¿Dónde está Dom? Dom is probably working, if I had to guess right now, but he was in the chat earlier. Dom is my Tuesday co-host. The rest of the week, and I don't do the Friday show too often. Obviously, it's hard to fill in a second show with the limited conversation that there is out there during the off season. But generally speaking, when the season gets kicking on, I will continue to do my Tuesday show with Dom, and then usually on the Friday afternoon, I'll pick it up, talk about the game that's upcoming, and keep it up. Yeah. Listen, I can't fault this fan base for just wishing for lightning in a bottle. I'm not gonna. I don't want to sit here and tell everybody what to do. I think we need to take a break when we're talking about franchise quarterbacks. I heard about Bryce Petty. I heard about Mark Sanchez, although he was drafted higher. I've just heard so many times. Every time Jets draft a quarterback, like in the middle rounds, everyone's hoping for that guy to be Tom Brady. And I'm right there with them. I just think, again, like we just need to slow the roll. Tom Brady's don't come around every single draft, and it's not easy for Tom Brady to come out there when the roster around him is horrible. It's just, again, slow it down, guys. I want it too. We all want it. But, to expect it is probably where it gets a little difficult. Cade could be QB1 by the end of the season when, if all thing goes to shit and, he's starting and, maybe, he gives us a little glimmer of hope. But I just don't know. This would be a big test for him week 2. I go back to it. Can he, when he's not the lowest level of importance on the field with an entire starting unit going up against second and third stringers, can he elevate the backups. That was probably my biggest topic. Is today he's going to go in there with the second unit, probably against Steelers' second/third unit. Can he look like one of the reasons why they're succeeding, instead of just having a strong unit around them that against backups that just moves the ball down the field? That's just the level of this next game that you want to see out of him. But I like what I saw out of Cade. I'm not gonna say that he's doesn't have any sort of ability. There's something out there. I just don't know if it's QB1 level. It's up to him to prove us all wrong, instead of us all believing that he's just gonna run away and just be that guy. Again, I just go back to it over and over. We've seen the story so many times. How many times have we seen a quarterback look sharp in the preseason, and when thrown out there in the regular season, looks like that type of guy that's drafted in the 4th or 5th round. It's just so many times that we just get overexcited about a player, and it's just we haven't seen it. If there was ever a season to see some sort of light, it'd probably be this year, because this Jets offensive unit has some promise. But again, Cade Klubnik was picked in the 4th round for a reason, and hopefully that reason is nobody believed that he had that first round potential, and he proves us all wrong. Chances are, and we've seen it so many times, that a player gets picked where they're believed to be picked because they have some deficiencies. He did battle injuries last year. I'm gonna give him that, and hopefully that's a reason why that his draft stock plummeted. But again, I just struggle to elevate him to where, okay, there's this quasi quarterback competition. Now, I just don't know what we're going to see out of Geno Smith today. It's going to be our first look at him with this Jets unit. You think it's bad right now, the conversation about Cade Klubnik being QB1. If Geno Smith goes out there and looks terrible, and Cade Klubnik goes out there and looks solid, the noise is only going to get louder and louder. It's really up to Geno Smith to shut the noise up. If he goes out there and looks like the Geno Smith that we know from 2 or 3 years ago, then we go into the season feeling a little confident, and the Cade Klubnik conversation dies down for a little bit. But it's just going to continue throughout the duration of the season. Anytime there's that promise of a potential franchise savior, whether it be a 1st overall pick, a 5th round pick, or whatever have you, this fan base is so quarterback starved. They're going to want to see what's behind Geno Smith if there's a period of struggle. They just don't want to deal with another season of loss and nothing to feel promising about. If you get deep into the season and the Jets are out of it, this family is going to be grumpy, cranky, irritated if they're going out there with Geno Smith in meaningless games instead of at least taking a look at what's behind him. These conversations have been at the forefront of Jets fandom for far too long. It's up to Geno Smith. That's all I really got to say about it. He was in a situation where he was a starter, got decked, and Ryan Fitzpatrick came in and kind of took it over. A different situation, obviously not a rookie. It's all about opportunity, and Geno Smith has an opportunity. He was traded away from the Raiders in a situation where they had the 1st overall pick, fell into a situation where he could be the number 1 player, but it's up to him to hold that job. Because at the end of the day, if he doesn't look promising and they have a guy behind him that looks like he can command an offense to some degree, the situation is that this franchise is going to want to see what's behind him, whether it's smart or not. I think if you go to him early, it's going to be very, very alarming conversation to have. But listen, the nature of what the Jets are is that they have a kind of stopgap quarterback with a rookie that's shown some level of promise, and this fan base is going to call for it as soon as things get a little dicey. And that's, again, just goes back to it. It's just the nature of the quarterback position when you're a team that's been starving for a quarterback since Joe Namath. Let's be real. Fun conversation. But again, we have big game tonight. Jets going into week 2 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of storylines out there. We talked about them all. Let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment. What are you most looking forward to seeing in this second game? Obviously, Cade Klubnik to be a popular topic, but if you are going to leave a comment, just add another thing if it's more than Cade Klubnik. Are you looking forward to seeing David Bailey in his second stint as the Jets defense, or second game as, the defensive end for the Jets? You want to see it? I would love to see a David Bailey sack in his week 2 of the preseason. Similar to a lot of things. I mean, I know he played limited snaps last week, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, he didn't even get a sack. He's number 2. It was limited reps. But you'd love to see a rookie get their first sack of the preseason and kind of get that first sack. You don't want a situation like Vernon Golston where the guy didn't have a sack for like 3 years or whatever it was going into the Rex Ryan tenure. You just want to see, again, love to see all the young guys just show a little bit of promise, because that's what this team is all about right now. They got a lot of veterans, but it's not about the veterans. It's about the veterans just holding the fort down and making us look like professionals while these young guys start working their way into roles. And eventually, hopefully, these younger guys are that next run of Jets that we can all be proud of, because it's been far, far too long that we've had players that we can really feel confident about going into a season. I love the draft class we had. I think that it shows a lot of potential. We're getting closer and closer to that regular season game on September 13th. So another day. Let's get this one again. Biggest topic conversation. Get out of this game without many injuries, and let's just show that we're moving in the right direction. That's, again, bare minimum conversation here. But when you're a Jet fan, you sometimes just looking to move in the right direction before things get crazy. Again, been a lot of fun. Appreciate everyone in the chat. Looking forward to, if you're not subscribed to Danger Zone, Dano's channel, please subscribe. We're gonna go live on tonight. I'll be on his show tonight at 9:30. We're having a fantasy draft. It'll be a live fantasy draft. I'll be on there. I got the first pick, believe it or not. So I'm pretty excited for that. We'll see how things go on that show. But hop on his channel. Dane's an awesome. He has an awesome channel. Big time Jet fan as well. So should be a lot of fun. And then also, if you're a Jet fan as well or not, if you're jumping in from another team, jump on the Mafia Sports Report. He was in the chat as well this afternoon. Jump over to his channel, hit that subscribe button over there. We go live every Saturday during the season for an AFC shakedown. Me, Tommy, Juan, Captain D, Curtis was on in the past. I'm not sure if they've found a replacement for him yet. I don't think he's doing it this year, but a lot of fun there, chopping it up with fans from other teams in the AFC East. Again, a lot of fun. Sucks being a Jet fan on the channel, but listen, as bad as team sucks, still love them. It's like one of those love-hate relationships. I love being a Jet fan. Hate watching the team play sometimes, but appreciate everyone in the chat. Everyone, thank you for joining. If you haven't, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, let's go Jets.